It's never too early to talk MLB trade deadline, and there are a couple of names that I think we'll be surprised to hear called whenever the deadline passes.
Step up to the plate. It's the Locked On MLB Squad Show, sponsored by Game Time. From the Dodgers to the Astros, the Mets to the Rangers, and everyone else in the league, with the experts of the Locked On Podcast Network bringing you the most comprehensive breakdown of all the action around the horn. We're coming in spikes up, no hurt feelings allowed, so squad up.
Squad up indeed. This is the latest edition of the Locked On MLB Squad Show. Thanks for making us part of your day. Got a small squad here today. 2 members of the AL West and 1 of the NL Central. Yours truly. My name is Jeff Carr. I am the Locked On MLB channel manager and 1/2 of Locked On Reds. Joining me is Booney from Locked On A's and 1/2 of Locked On Astros and Brett Chansey. And we are ready to discuss the big topics surrounding. We're getting close. I mean, it's time to talk some trades. We're getting into that point where trade rumors are really heating up around the league. There are some speculation. There are some this team is connected to this player type things going on. So we're going to put on our prediction hats. We're going to get our crystal balls out and start telling you who will be the biggest name moved at this trade deadline. We'll discuss buyers, sellers. What does it all really mean, especially in this expanded playoff age, because it kind of feels like everybody's a buyer at this point, unless you're the Colorado Rockies. Sorry, Paul. I don't think he'll show up just yet. We'll see. But that's all coming up on today's Locked On MLB Squad. That's brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the promo code Locked On MLB to save $20 off your first purchase. All right, gentlemen, the trade deadline is always a hot time, especially as you get into that final couple of days. It really feels like everything picks up. I don't know why. I feel like all of Major League Baseball are just a bunch of procrastinators, and they just really want to wait for that deadline before they make their move. But I think at the end of the day, there's some interesting names that have been floated about. And I'm curious because the first one for me, and it really just depends on how this team continues to play right now, Jarren Duran, is he actually going to get moved?
I think the big thing with Duran and any of the American League teams for that matter, I mean, look at the American League. Red Sox are only 3 games out, and you're talking about a player like Duran, one of the better players in all of the American League. I think it all depends with regard to if these teams are going to make a move, if they get value in return, right? If they're just not going to sell players to sell players. If they get a package in return that makes sense, that's going to make the team significantly better, they'll make the move. But how can you just sell off players just to sell off or get rid of a contract or whatever it may be when you're 3 games back of a playoff spot? That to me makes 0 sense.
Well, and with the Red Sox having Alex Bregman down pretty much until like to be determined, because when he was with the Astros, he had some of these same type injuries, and I believe in 21 he was out till July or August. So if he's going to be out a significant amount of the summer, then you're also removing another guy that's a solid part of your lineup, unless what we always say is, does it make the Boston Red Sox better to trade Duran for what they get in return? And, you know, they say the only good trade in Major League Baseball is when both teams benefit, but that means both teams are also hurt. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, you know. We've seen, you know, trades like last year when the Astros picked up Yusei Kikuchi. He went on an unbelievable run, but didn't even get a chance to contribute in the playoffs. And so, you know, you had him for a rental. Luckily, for the Astros, those guys haven't necessarily panned out. I mean, Will Wagner's been, you know, better. What is it? Gosh, I cannot remember the pitcher's name right off the top of my head that went with. I can picture him throwing, but we threw a pitcher in there and Joey Loperfido, 3 players for him. And it was a rental. It didn't, I mean, it worked out, but it didn't. And it's always a crapshoot when you go to the trade market.
Right. And I mean, nobody knows better about trading potential young stud outfielders than the Boston Red Sox do. I mean, that Mookie Betts deal worked for them. but there's definitely a lot of teams that it feels like they're poised. And you talk about like the Chicago Cubs of the world that need all the pitching help that they can get. You're looking at a couple of different teams that it feels like they're one bat away. And of course, everybody needs bullpen help. So predicting that a relief pitcher is going to get dealt at the deadline, like Kenley Jansen feels like an easy pick for me. But Jarren Duran kind of feels like that wow factor, because when I first heard that he was, being bandied about even by bloggers, not even necessarily people connected to the Red Sox, kind of surprised me a little bit, because I know they got Roman Anthony and stuff, but talent is talent. Like when you got talent, there's no reason to get rid of it.
But let me ask you guys this question: the Angels, perfect example, and obviously we're making these predictions 5 weeks, 6 weeks from the trade deadline. But you look at the Angels, and you're telling me they're 2.5 games back. They're going to be sellers in 6 weeks if they're in the exact same position. I mean, they're just going to kind of give up on the season, give up their ace closer, give up what they have and sell, being 2.5 games back. That to me is nuts.
And you make a good point, because in an extenuating circumstance with Shohei Ohtani, but a couple of years ago they were under 500 and they bought at the trade deadline because they were trying to salvage the last year of Shohei Ohtani. So that's not as if they know the traditional line between buyers and sellers in Los Angeles.
Or you look at the Tigers from last year. Tigers, they get rid of Flaherty, right? Then all of a sudden they make an unreal run.
Yeah, that's a thing, and I think the Angels is an interesting team, because we actually spoke about them on the last Locked On Astros, because they are, outside of the Astros, the hottest team in the AL West. They've been playing the best ball. The Rangers have fallen off. Now they went off and rattled off 16 runs today, which was insane. But for the most part, they're former podcaster turned hitting coach, as our local beat writer called him, for the Rangers, hasn't really turned out to work for their offense. And so now the Angels find themselves kind of in the mix. And I don't think a lot of us had them here at this point. So they do have some arms. They do have some talent that they could trade away. But if they're trying to compete, is it worth trading? Is it worth getting rid of and getting something in return? And, who are those names going to be, and where are they going to come from? We may see some names come from the AL East and the Orioles, and Cedric Mullen and Ryan O'Hearn, big names over there. And they've got some pitching that they probably want to offload, because the Orioles have really underperformed. You haven't heard a lot from Gunnar Henderson this year. There was this.
Adley Rutschman has been way down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, Brooksgate put out like stat categories for every team that led, and the Orioles led with heaviest team, average weight. I mean, it's not
kind of
good
feels like
Baltimore
games
right
played statistic, right? That's like,
right.
Yeah, you were here. Like we gave you a stat. Like, yeah, that's kind of tough. And I'm with you. Like I feel like the Orioles, and they're a team that even, they're the opposite of the Angels, right? The Angels bought when they were under 500 a couple of years ago. The Orioles sold whenever it looked like they had a chance to win the division, and they were, trading off their closer and things like that. So I think there's a little bit of a different regime in charge of the ownership box there, and when it comes to Baltimore. But at the end of the day, where do they really think they're going to go this year, as opposed to where they expect to be next year? Because they're still one of those teams that have like the most ridiculous farm system in baseball. They're still got so much talent coming up behind. I mean, I get it. They got Adley Rutschman, and he's kind of had a rough year. And oh, by the way, right behind him, they got like the top catching prospect in all of baseball too. So there's so much about this Orioles team that I find interesting. And I think between them and between another team in the East, although they're National League counterparts, these two teams might be the most interesting teams at the deadline. I'll tell you who those are next. Coffee, and more coffee. Let's be real. Sometimes there's nothing that gets me out of bed faster than coffee. And the best coffee you can get is through Trade coffee. I mean, whether you've got a long day ahead of driving around with all the kids' stuff, shuttling them back and forth from practice to school to recitals and all the stuff, or if you got a long day at the office, obviously you're going to need some caffeine. And Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the United States, delivering fresh, incredible coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. You can take their Trade quiz so that you can find the exact right taste for you, because like I said, over the 50 of the country's top roasters, there's plenty of options out there for you. Plus, right now, Trade is exclusively offering you 50% off 1 month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. That's drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb for 50% off your 1 month trial at drinktrade.com/lockedonmlb. We appreciate you for always making your favorite Locked On MLB podcast part of your everyday routine, and every week making Locked On MLB Squad a part of your routine. We love talking baseball here. We got Brett Chansey and Booney alongside me here from the AL West. We're talking about the trade deadline, looking ahead. Mentioned that, could be a big name player or two on the move, and we'll keep talking about some names there. But I kind of wanted to switch gears for just a moment, looking at a couple of teams that are interesting. We mentioned the Orioles, and I think that the Orioles will be infinitely interesting because how do they view themselves in terms of this year? Because it kind of feels like they've really fallen away. But another team that seems as though they're falling out of the race, but my gosh, they're far too talented to really quit on the wild card race right now on the National League side of things, the Atlanta Braves. Are we really looking at Alex Anthopoulos making some seller moves? Because we're talking about a dude that really knows how to buy. I mean, he bought himself a really good couple of trades to win the World Series a few years back. Is he going to be on the opposite side of that deal here this deadline?
Well, he could be. But one of the things that comes back, I think, promising for them is Ronald Acuna Jr. has picked up where he left off. I mean, he has been dominant in his first few games back. That's got to be a boost. I know maybe Marcelo Zuna is one of those names. Raciel Iglesias may be one of those names that they look at trading. But I mean, gosh, they let go of, Fried. They tried to bring Spencer Strider back, too soon. So they've made some errors. Maybe they're looking to trade to upgrade because, I mean, Astros fans know it too well in 2021 when the Braves made this surprising run from obscurity to, I remember going with Jake Mastriani and myself and Eric on the pre-World Series show, and he even predicted the Braves to lose in 5. And so, I mean, this is baseball and it's a long season. It depends. Can the Braves right some of the wrongs and guys that they let go, guys that they brought back too soon? I mean, Schwellenbach for them is pitching like an absolute Cy Young winner. Just got through throwing a complete game there for them in Atlanta. So, Jeff, do they have the prospects or capital to get something back that can help them win this year?
Well, now I know this. When we're talking about good front office moves, what's that? I hear some rock and roll from the city of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He is Justin live from Locked On Guardians.
We're here.
We're talking.
Yes, it's always rock and roll,
front
always guard, always guitars all the time.
Nice.
I love it. But speaking of shrewd front offices, I mean, Cleveland, they know what's up. Like when you're thinking about being on that line between a buyer and a seller, and whether or not a team like the Atlanta Braves really has it in them to add at the deadline, or should they move to add for next year? Like the Guardians seem to be better than most teams at making those decisions.
Yeah, the Guardians, we were just talking about this on our episode of Locked On Guardians on Friday, is the balance between winning and development. The Guardians are always trying to win while developing, and that's such a hard thing to do. And you got the guys like the teams like the Rays that always do it, but they find ways to stay competitive and not have too many down years. But it's a tough line to straddle, really, because you're not really putting one foot forward in either side. I think you sometimes have to pick a lane, but you also have to be opportunistic. Like, who was it last year? I think it was was it Houston, or I forget what trades happened last year. The Cubs. I'm sorry, it was the Cubs got Isaac Paredes last year, and they weren't going anywhere last year. They ended up flipping him this year, which ended up being a good trade for them. But that they bought in a year no one thought they were going to bought. So I think it's being more opportunistic is where a lot of teams sit these days. I also just think this is not going to be a fun trade deadline. I hate to throw cold water here, but like there's a lot of teams that are stuck in the middle. Like you got a lot of buyers. Who's selling? Like the Rockies that we've talked about this before. I'm sure Paul will show up, but who's selling? The Marlins have some pieces, but outside of that, the sellers don't have any pieces.
I mean, the big side. I think if the Pirates can somehow package Keller and Reynolds, even for a bottle of dirt, just to get rid of those contracts, that might be appealing to a team that has the money. The Rockies, Ryan McMahon, I think will be somebody that goes, and I think with the Diamondbacks, with losing Corbin. I think they're all of a sudden, especially being in that National League, I think Naylor might be on the move and Suarez might be on the move. So I think there's a few sellers in the National League versus the American League where a lot of teams are still in it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like if the Pirates show up to the podium, though, and say, yo, Mitch and Brian are ready to go, I think they're going to get more than a bottle of dirt for that.
And for those contracts, too, yeah. Those contracts are no joke. But again,
are they gonna trade Skeens?
No, it's impossible to trade Skeens.
Too early. It's too early. I think that's hilarious.
There's not a there's no farm system out there that can afford that. Like even the Red Sox, you can't trade Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer and all those guys for Paul Skeens right now. They will say the Pirates absolutely cannot trade Brian Reynolds. Mitch Keller is a different story. But they cannot trade Brian Reynolds. He's not Brian Reynolds is not having a good year to begin with. B, the fans might as well just, they're not really showing up now, but the fans might as well just come on Paul Skeens Day and then never show up again because that's the first guy that really extended long term. And I know he's not playing all that well, but like you've got Paul Skeens. Maybe you'll get Jared Jones back next year. You've got guys in the minors like Bubba Chandler.
Yep.
Yeah. You got to have Paul Skeens there and try to or Brian Reynolds there.
Too, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to have a guy like Brian Reynolds figure it out because that's going to be how you win. Like we yell at the Guardians all the time for wasting Jose Ramirez's best years. The Pirates got Paul Skeens. He might be. He's probably 1B in Major League Baseball right now to Tarek Skubal's at 1A, or maybe it's more of 1 and 2. But you can't waste those years, especially the cheap years of him before he's pre-arb. Like. You trade Brian Reynolds now, you might as well trade Paul Skeens because you're just giving up on his cheapest window.
Here's a question for you guys. Cardinals 3 games back. Does Arenado go?
I think the moment they get an offer,
So why would he go now?
You know what? And guess who just left the game tonight after hitting his 15th home run, pulling up lane, running to first, Isaac Paredes for the Houston Astros.
Wow.
And they already had a deal on the table that
may
Arenado next, but
that may open the door for Nolan Arenado coming to Houston. Now, what Houston would have to give up, I don't know. They would probably ask for Cam Smith. They would, Jake Myers may be in there. But right now we got Jacob Melton who just came up and just looks the part really well. Cam Smith out there killing it. But the Astros need a left-handed bat. I know that. And just
Ryan McMahon
earlier. I'm sorry,
Ryan McMahon.
Yeah, he's a Rocky. We have one Rocky on our team, Brendan Rodgers.
And
They're calling him B-Raj, and I'm like, no, this guy doesn't garner a nickname. Now, Ryan O'Hearn, former Sam Houston State University Bearcat, would love him in an Astros uniform, but Mike Elias might play hardball with his old team and demand quite a bit from them. Maybe they cherry pick Miguel Uola, who's having a great season in AAA right now in Sugar Land.
Sam Houston State, just the second best school to be called the Bearcats. Anyway, I will say this: I think that. That's always an interesting wrinkle.
Oh,
right?
is Ryan O'Hearn hurt?
Definitely talent, but if if
He hit a
injuries
bomb
come into
against the
play,
A's.
for sure. Yeah.
That's still going.
I would say this. I think I've got two questions to ask. One of them I have an answer for. The other one pertains to which team needs a big trade, and not even big trade. Which team needs the trade deadline the most? We'll talk about that next. The NBA Finals are raging on, and the best place to make a couple of bucks on the action is over at FanDuel. I mean, they got money lines, they got point spreads, they got prop bets galore, and new users can get $200 in bonus bets with your first winning $5 bet. Those are odds so crazy, you're not likely to find a bet that's actually going to pay out, unless, of course, you took the Pacers to win the finals back at the beginning of the playoffs. They're positioned pretty well to do that, up 2-1. And FanDuel's actually got the Pacers laying 6 points at home in game 4. Are you kidding me? Rick Carlisle, ain't no way he misses those 6 points. I might even sprinkle a little bit on the money line, plus 190. There's all kinds of Major League Baseball lines as well, whether you're talking about who's going to hit a home run or how many strikeouts your starting pitcher is going to get. So go check out FanDuel right now. Like I said, new users get $200 in bonus bets with your first winning $5 bet. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. There is a podcast for your favorite MLB team on the Locked On MLB channel. Go check them out today. Make us part of your everyday routine. I'd like to also apologize. I think I got my betting parlance a little bit mixed up there. The Pacers are getting 6.5 points. They're not laying they're getting 6 points. They're not laying 6 points. So anyway, yes, they're underdogs to the Thunder in game 4, and they're up 2-1, and they're at home, and they ain't losing, baby. I'm taking them Pacers. Let's go. Anyway, back to baseball, because the trade deadline, looking ahead, a little bit of predictions here when we're talking about biggest players moved and things like that. My question, first and foremost, is when it comes to the deadline, what team right now, considering the needs of that team and the position that it's in, what team needs the trade deadline the most? And I know that we're having a hard time who's determining whether they are sellers, but which buyer thinks that this deadline is the most important? Because I think it's the Cubs.
Yep,
I think the
I was
Cubs go
just gonna
get
say the
themselves
Cubs.
an arm. The Cubs could be talking about like contending for the National League. I mean, they might even be looking past the division at this point. They go get themselves an arm. They could be talking about contending for the NL pennant.
I'll be very surprised if the Cubs don't get one of the following pitchers: Keller, Alcantara, or Gallen.
Yeah, no, those are all arms, and I know, Alcantara was the guy that I know I would love the Astros to go get.
His most recent outing was encouraging.
Yeah,
and
that was a big outing for him.
But as much as you talk about the Cubs, of course, you have to look at the Astros, because Arrighetti, they say, will not come back until late July, maybe August. And then Javier and Garcia may not be back till late July, early August. So you've got Ryan Gusto, Colton Gordon, and you have, why am I dropping the other pitcher's name? The third, I'm going blank on names today. We got 3 young pitchers right now that are, Brandon Walter. He's kind of the diamond in the rough. They've been phenomenal, all 3 of them. Gusto just had his most encouraging start. What do? They got Yola there in AAA, but it can't just be a heavier version of what the Tigers had. Remember last year, the Tigers had 1 starting pitcher going to the playoffs. Well, right now, the Astros, technically, yes, you can count Lance McCullers, but we have 2 legit starters, and Hunter Brown and Framber Valdez, who are pitching their butts off, but you got to have 2. You've got to have 2 more at least solid options. And so I think the Astros are going to be buyers at the trade deadline. I just don't know what they're going to send away to get that. And this Isak Paredes thing may change the whole face of who they go after, depending on how long they think he's going to be out. Hopefully it's a mild hamstring strain, but that's what it looked like when he pulled up at first.
I'll be interested to see what happens in the NL and in the trade market, because you've got the Cubs obviously need a starting pitcher, and they could be real contenders for the National League, like you said, Jeff, if they go out and get a starting pitcher, because the Dodgers have 20 starting pitchers, but 10 of them or 15 of them are on the injured list. So if the Dodgers can't stay healthy, if the Cubs just get a starting pitcher, they might be on very even footing. The Mets are doing really well, but they could use a couple of pieces. I think the Phillies are really interesting too, because Aaron Nola is out to the All-Star break. He hasn't really been all that good this year. You've got Zach Wheeler, who's fantastic. And I think their bullpen's been a little bit shaky in Philadelphia, so they need pieces. And then if you look over at the AL East too, the AL East is fascinating because the Blue Jays are on a hot streak right now, and Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins both are playing, not playing, but they're front officing, not managing. I don't know that's the adjective for front officing for their jobs.
I like it.
If they don't make the playoffs this year, if they don't make the playoffs this year, both those guys might be out of a job. So they need a good trade deadline as well. But I don't know what pieces the Blue Jays have to give up to acquire anything. But if they go out and have a good deadline, they can justify the Vlad contract. They can justify hanging on to Bo Bichette, and they can maybe keep their jobs. And I don't think the Orioles are going to sell because Mike Elias wants to keep his job too. He already had to fire his manager. I don't know what's going to happen.
It does feel like if you let go of a manager and then in the following deadline you sell, that you're just making the job easier for ownership to be like, all right, maybe you're not the guy to lead that front office moving forward. I'd be intrigued to see how that kind of goes, because I think that the Cubs have, the Blue Jays have that interesting storyline going on with them. The Cubs have their opportunity in front of them, and the Astros, like you mentioned, Brett, like, is the AL West like the most gettable division? Like, I get it. The Mariners have the best pitching that there is, but their hitting is so suspect.
Oh man, it is. I keep saying it. We're the AFC South of MLB. It's just a division that is
bad.
It's bad. The Astros have actually
just good enough, right? Just good enough.
But the Astros have had the fewest games versus teams under 500, and they are squarely in first place. They won again. They beat the White Sox in this series, where they went to Chicago. They lost 2 out of 3, so they won 2 out of 3 this time. And they're playing with confidence. You just wonder. Isaac Paredes has been the MVP of this team offensively. He's been great with the glove. You just wonder what they're going to do. This team's got enough wherewithal to move forward. But, you take one of your only consistent bats out of the lineup right now. Hopefully it's not for long. But the Astros.
It feels like a trade could take the pressure off a first-year manager.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that number one. And then us. When is Jordan coming back? They say he may be able to grab a bat by the end of this week, which is tomorrow. What does that mean? He can pick up a bat? That's great. That means nothing to me. And the Astros celebrated their doctor 35th anniversary after the debacle of finding out that Jordan Alvarez had a fractured hand. So it's kind of a clown show right now when it comes to our medical department in Houston. So I don't know. For us, it's health. Health is the key word in Houston. Health is the word of the day, kids.
It's going to be so intriguing to see what the Reds do specifically, just to kind of talk for a moment about them, because they are so up and down. They were expected to be a lot better off than they are right now, and they're done playing the Guardians. Sorry, Justin. So no more wins on the horizon there. Just kidding. Wanted to throw a little shade your way. But when it comes to what they're going to do at the deadline, one of the beat writers said, let's trade Hunter Green. I don't know that I buy in on that. That seems a little weird. But I think if you mention the name Hunter Green at the trade deadline, there's going to be a whole bunch of people jump up and be like, yo, what you want? Because feels like that's a pretty interesting move, but seems like you would just hurt your own team, even though what you might get back is interesting. Let me ask you guys this to finish this off, because in the offseason, there were reports, and I think that this is not just for one team, this is for the entire league, but there were reports that Reds general manager or Reds president of baseball operations, Nick Krall, said that whenever he had trade discussions with other teams, they weren't talking prospects. They were talking major leaguers for major leaguers. Do we think, kind of like what Justin was alluding to earlier on, is that going to slow things down? Because it feels like there's not as much, prospect for player chatter when it comes to buying and selling.
Yeah, I think Justin's right on what he says. I think it's going to be a more quiet type of trade deadline than we think it will be.
Yeah, it's not going to be super exciting. There will be a couple big names that will change hands. You'll have some people try to make some moves, and I think Dana Brown's been on the phone for a few weeks already. They said they're looking for another starting pitcher. They said they're looking for a left-handed bat. And also, we don't know because they're never honest with us, so we don't know how long Jordan's going to be out. So that left-handed bat couldn't come any later. And I think with Isaac Paredes going down, you automatically call the Cardinals tonight and say, "Hey guys, remember? Come on,
How'd that feel?
Let's re-talk. Let's open
the major." The major league thing is going to slow things down. Absolutely. I think what'll happen is you'll have a lot of teams muddled in the middle, which they are right now. And that'll lead to a very slow, last week or so. Everyone's going to wait till the last second. These teams are going to wait as long as they can to decide their direction. They're going to give their teams the opportunity to show them, should I invest in this roster? Should I trade pieces off? Now you'll have teams that are going to be opportunistic. Again, the Cubs getting Paredes last year turned into a lot more, but we'll see what happens with them overall. But I still think that you're going to see a lot of last minute deals because that's for how you're going to get it done with MLB players. For MLB players, everyone's got to decide their direction, and this is where the extra wild cards hurt them. It's fun to have more teams in the playoff race, but it stinks because the trade deadline is a lot worse. So you've got teams that are not anywhere near contention, like the White Sox or the Athletics right now. Sorry,
I think we're in contention still.
And the Rockies, who are the worst team in baseball. Okay. we have different definitions of contention.
Let me believe, man. Let me believe, okay? Just let me roll with it. Still believe. It's a lot of season left.
It's only it's Friday. It's Friday the 13th, so I'll give it to you. You never know.
I'm just waiting for the headline that it was just like, well, the way that we played today, being July 31st, trade deadline day, really let us know that we were buyers, and that is why we made this trade. I'm just waiting for that. I'm waiting. It's like the baseball trade deadline version of Michael Scott, trying to fire somebody, and Jim looking at the camera and said, really, truthfully, it's just going to be the first person that gives him a bad look in the hall. And therein lies the essence of his charisma. And that's where we will end today's Locked On MLB Squad show. Thank you so much for checking out today's version of Locked On MLB Squad. Booney, Justin, I appreciate you. Brett had to jump before we ended, but appreciate him joining us too. And we're looking forward to next week whenever we really start to dig in on the all-star roster and exactly who should be starting, who should be on it, and quite frankly, what all does the all-star game mean anymore? Make sure you join us on the next Locked On MLB Squad. And make sure you check out Sully, what he's got coming up for you on the next Locked On MLB show. That's coming up right here on the Locked On MLB channel. Go check out your favorite team's podcast. We got one for you on the Locked On MLB channel. We are all part of the Locked On MLB or Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.